Story 1. They are targeting individuals known to immigration and customs enforcement, which means these individuals are mostly involved in the legal immigration process. If they wanted to target unauthorized immigrants, it would require more effort and be more dangerous. This approach allows them to present a narrative through certain news outlets that they are deporting many immigrants, without acknowledging that these individuals are not criminals or were here legally. This is propaganda reminiscent of totalitarian regimes. Story 2. You don't justify it. It's honestly a very harsh and oppressive thing to do, and quite scary. My heart goes out to all the immigrants living in fear right now. Story 3. I watched a documentary a few years ago about U.S. immigration and customs enforcement. They claim they do not feel remorse because they believe the individuals are guilty. One person compared it to a security guard catching a trespasser, stating that the property is marked with signs indicating that trespassers are not allowed. The interviewer inquired about the children, and they responded that they hold the family responsible for prompting the child to break the law. Story 4. One of the fundamental differences between people on the right and left is that those on the right do not care about collateral damage as long as the correct individuals are punished, while those on the left do not mind if some individuals evade consequences as long as the innocent are not punished. Story 5. One excuse I have heard is to prevent family separation. There have been cases in which the children are American by birth, but the parents lack legal status. When the parents are detained, they are told that if they want to keep the children, then the children must also be deported. Otherwise, the children are sent into foster care, making it nearly impossible to reunite with them. Story 6. Immigration and customs enforcement should collect evidence against suspects and ensure that they have their day in court with due process before deportation. Every deportee should have the ability to defend themselves. If the government wants to expedite the deportation of migrants, it should hire a significant number of judges and defense attorneys to minimize delays in the legal process. Story 7. There is no justification. I am an undocumented immigrant. I am currently going through the immigration process to attempt to adjust my status. I am also a deferred action for childhood arrivals recipient. I have lost all confidence in the legal system because of what has been happening. What is the point of people saying, do it the right way, if when we try to do it the right way, we still end up getting deported? They have been targeting legal immigrants like Fabian Schmidt, a German national with legal permanent residence in the United States. He was returning to the United States from a vacation in Europe and was detained by Customs and Border Protection at the airport, where he was pressured to give up his green card. When he refused, he was taken into custody and treated extremely harshly, to the point where he was rushed to the emergency room. Despite having a green card, he will remain in custody until his hearing in June. Various permanent residents have reported that Customs and Border Protection has been pressuring them to sign Form I-407 in order to voluntarily give up their status and have been threatened with detention if they refuse to do so. So much for doing it the right way. Seeking asylum in the United States is also a legal means to enter the country, but various asylum seekers have already been arrested. Worse yet, some were even sent to Guantanamo Bay, while others were sent to a detention center. Despite the fact that many of these individuals had no criminal background, many were already within the asylum system, their claims being processed through the courts. They were picked up by immigration and customs enforcement during their routine check-ins as their cases were processed. In the case of people like Luis Alberto Castillo Rivera, he was allowed to enter the United States with permission on January 19th to attend his asylum hearing, only for the next day's inauguration to lead to the cancellation of his appointment. Despite being allowed to enter with permission, he was still arrested and sent to Guantanamo Bay, with the excuse being that his Michael Jordan tattoo meant he was affiliated with a gang. Personally, I have lost all trust and confidence in the legal system. I know my days are numbered. I know that when I go in for my green card interview, it will likely be a trap. I know that if I have to renew my deferred action for childhood arrivals before then, the biometrics appointment could also be a trap. It is a lose-lose situation because if I choose not to attend the appointment, they will simply claim that I avoided it and use that as an excuse to deport me anyway. I was brought to the United States as a 1-year-old, and I will be getting deported to a country I have never been to. Story 8. I asked my dad what the acceptable amount of collateral damage was during these mass deportations. He says the government is too incompetent to run the post office. He wouldn't answer and kept talking about how you can't skip to the front of the immigration line. I realized in that conversation that he's a completely lost cause. I'm still getting used to the feeling of being ashamed of my father. It's a new experience for me. Story 9. I'm pretty sure they view them all as illegals, especially the ones who come here legally and are born here. Story 10. It's not about them doing so. It's about illegally denying due process rights. Justifying an unconstitutional action based on gang affiliation demonstrates willful ignorance. John Wayne Gacy had more rights than immigration detainees. Take all the time you need to think about that. Story 11. What's worse is that these individuals believe immigrants are the source of their problems, not the wealthy corporations and business owners who continually exploit them. Story 12. The illegal immigration talking point has always been a fallacy. They are okay with deporting legal immigrants and families because the core motivation is racism, not merely ensuring that the proper immigration procedures are being followed. Story 13. It is performative. Biden deported more people by a significant margin in the correct way, but they need to engage their constituents, so they conduct these dramatic deportations for show and news coverage. Story 14. Having worked in unlawful detention matters in the UK, I find it astounding that there seems to be no legal recourse for individuals being detained for deportation without a legal basis. Story 15. It's simple. They believe legal immigrants should not have been legal in the first place. This became evident when Trump targeted legal Haitian immigrants in Springfield, Ohio. However, the legal immigrants who voted for Trump either did not recognize this or thought they would not be targeted. Story 16. They have already dehumanized anyone who is not the right kind of person, and they harbor hatred towards all of them. It does not matter to them if they are incorrect from a legal standpoint. They do not want any of them here. Story 17. By using plausible deniability, by not caring that the boy who cried wolf is crying yet again, and by being tired of all the nonsense. Story 18. There is no justification for this when there are already approved legal procedures in place that protect everyone's rights. Story 19. They are part of an elimination scheme where only a selected percentage, primarily white men loyal to the cause, retain full rights. Everyone else is either to be destroyed or placed under a state of servitude. Story 20. If you consider that immigration and customs enforcement exists to make marginalized communities afraid rather than protect the country, then their actions make a lot of sense. Immigrants who are here legally often hold a negative opinion against those who come and stay here illegally. After all, the legal residents put in the hard work and went through the process, so why shouldn't anyone else? Deporting people who are here illegally won't silence marginalized communities. However, if you start detaining legal residents and even citizens of color, deport them, and then refuse to bring them back when their legal status is confirmed by a federal judge, your threat is as loud as a gunshot. Anyone who speaks out or acts against the administration can be rounded up and deported. Due process doesn't exist for them. They may never see their case before a court. They could be shipped off to a foreign country, and the US government will deny that they ever existed. Think about it. What is the point of rounding up people for deportation when they show up for appointments with their immigration office to renew their status? What is the point of arresting legal immigrants when they appear at a courthouse to challenge a traffic violation? What is the point of having enforcement officers drive around in unmarked cars, wearing hoodies and with no visible identification, and literally snatch and grab individuals off the streets? These aren't the actions of law enforcement acting in good faith. This doesn't make America safe again. It just breeds fear. And fear will make people sit down and stay quiet because they might be next. Story 21. There is no justification. However, I do not agree that this is fascism or a new Nazi regime. Law enforcement, government agencies, and the rule of law all commit terrible crimes against the American people. It does not matter who is in office. It feels incredibly dishonest to target Republicans for this, as these types of things have been happening for many years. For instance, Barack Obama used drones to target American citizens and kill them without due process. Maria Butina, a Russian national legally in the United States, was imprisoned for reaching out to the National Rifle Association without filling out a form. They labeled her falsely as a spy, put her in prison, and then deported her. Her crime was not filling out a form, which would have made her conversations with the National Rifle Association legal. This occurred under Donald Trump, whom Democrats believe to be a Russian asset. So, you want my opinion? I agree with what is happening. All of it. We have ignored these injustices for so long that we absolutely needed something to enrage us. We need to deeply examine all of our laws and carefully consider how to make them genuinely more just. Without addressing these injustices, we will continue to have this back and forth, where it is perfectly acceptable if one party is in the White House, but deemed fascism if a different party is elected. Instead of this constant back and forth, we can discuss what is fair and what is just. In this specific instance, do we need to redefine what constitutes legal immigration? What does true justice look like here? Should we allow all immigrants, whether legal or not, to extend their stay using inefficiencies in our court system? Is there a better approach, and if so, what does that look like? Now is the time to ask these questions because now we can. Story 22. It is better to punish 1,000 innocents than let one guilty person go free, seems to be their motto. I don't care about legalities. I want my fresh fruit picked and delivered, and my meat readily available in neat plastic-wrapped portions. I don't care who did the work as long as it is not me doing that hard labor for low wages. Even with high wages, I'm not doing it. Story 23. They simply do not care. They hold racist beliefs and target individuals based on their skin color. Story 24. Do you mean the young children of illegal immigrants who want to bring their child with them? Are you suggesting we separate the family? Story 25. The people involved do not feel the need to justify their actions. Why are you attempting to initiate a moral debate with people lacking a sense of morality? Story 26. What an absurd statement made by someone who clearly does not look beyond headlines. Additionally, look at all the followers. Story 27. Just as you justify the execution of innocent individuals through the death penalty, you say, you can't make an omelet without cracking a few eggs. However, those eggs are people and the omelet represents a fascist dictatorship. Story 28. El Salvador agreed to accept Venezuelan undocumented migrants because Venezuela would not take them back. I still do not see any legal immigrants being deported. Legal is the key word. Story 29. They start with the assumption that all immigrants are problematic. Accidentally deporting citizens or documented immigrants is not a concern for them, but rather an annoyance. In the end, they believe that all immigrants are undesirable, and this just saves time in the long run. Story 30. Because we do not learn from history. Those of us who saw it coming were ignored and told that we were overreacting. It seems that Trump can do whatever he wants without facing repercussions. Story 31. In the words of a former in-law, they're not human. This comment was specifically about the children. Story 32. How do they justify it to themselves? Legal or not, they aren't white, so it doesn't really matter. I am not sure how many times they have to say racist things before people will finally start believing that they are just racists. Story 33. You cannot. People will make excuses, but moral clarity is required in this moment. If you are deporting American children with cancer, for example, that is wrong and should be unacceptable. Story 34. You need to ask these questions in conservative, MAGA, and Republican forums because others are morally and constitutionally outraged. Story 35. That's the fun part. They don't. I also agree it is both unconstitutional and immoral. However, conservatives do not care about morals. Story 36. This is nothing new. We are just repeating our own history. The Mexican repatriation was the repatriation, deportation, and expulsion of Mexicans and Mexican Americans from the United States during the Great Depression between 1929 and 1939. Estimates of how many were repatriated, deported, or expelled range from 300,000 to 2 million, of which 40 to 60% were citizens of the United States, overwhelmingly children. Story 37. I do not justify it. People who voted for this are excited about the idea of deporting non-whites. They may try to lessen the severity by saying mistakes happen, but they are not advocating for ending programs or bringing victims back. Story 38. You assume that they feel any need to justify their actions. With Donald Trump in the Oval Office, they feel invulnerable. Even when he is gone, it is unlikely there will be any consequences in the future. There were none after his first term, so why expect any different after his second term ends? Story 39. You cannot justify deporting legal immigrants and families just to search for undocumented individuals. Legal immigrants followed the rules. They paid the fees, completed the paperwork, and passed background checks. Expelling them would punish people without cause, representing a total violation of basic fairness and the rule of law. Additionally, it is extremely cruel. Families are torn apart, individuals become homeless, and children are traumatized, all for the chance of finding an undocumented person. This approach is not only ineffective but also unacceptable. Legally, it is a serious violation. U.S. law protects legal immigrants. They cannot simply be deported on a whim. At that point, it is no longer about immigration enforcement. It is about discrimination and fear-mongering. If you wish, I can provide real examples where similar government actions failed dramatically. Story 40. Let's just say that obeying selfish individuals moved me to a bigger house. Oops, I said the selfish part out loud. Well, here's another good excuse. When you don't consider Latinos fully human, it's a lot easier to treat them poorly. Story 41. It seems you are speaking to someone unresponsive. These individuals are filled with hate. They always have been and likely always will be. Perhaps we should let those who harbor such feelings have the entire country, as they will never stop their negativity. Story 42. They won't harbor the undocumented individuals if they understand the potential consequences, so they will go out of their way to remove them. This is likely the thought process they employ, even if it is unlikely to occur. Story 43. It is an unintended consequence of allowing millions of unvetted illegal immigrants into our country. It is unfortunate. Hopefully, errors are corrected quickly. Story 44. If the parents are illegal immigrants, then the whole family has to go. The kids can come back when they are older if they want. What are you going to do? Exempt the parents from immigration law because they have a child? Put the kids in foster care? This is why birthright citizenship is problematic. It is the anchor baby issue that has been a concern for years. Hopefully, the court addresses this problem next month. As for legal immigrants, there are conditions on their visas, and they must comply with those conditions. I do not think deporting legal immigrants should be prioritized as highly as deporting illegal immigrants, and I wish the administration would focus more on the latter. Story 45. The trillion-dollar megacorporation asks you to donate to the hungry while you can barely afford your own groceries. The company that spills tons of gallons of oil in the Gulf of Mexico is tweeting about lowering your carbon footprint. The nepotism beneficiary is telling you to save money by eating less French cuisine and not to drive a $40,000 Lamborghini every day. Chris Hansen warns you that there is a predator in every corner of your town and shows how they set up a sting for someone who drove for 3 hours. The right wing claims that 1 million ruined lives are justifiable to capture a few dozen undocumented individuals. Those in power, who clearly have more than they should, tell the common folk the 99% should change for the better, while the 1% causes around 85% of the issues people are complaining about. Story 46. You don't justify it. You start arresting immigration and customs enforcement agents for following illegal orders and violating people's civil rights. Story 47. The issue boils down to how the government operates. We all want to believe the government is capable of solving problems, but it does not. The federal government is not a scalpel but a sledgehammer. It cannot solve every problem without collateral. That said, while I know there are some legal migrants who are unfortunately getting caught up, some of the legal migrants have still violated the law by abusing the system. I know of a few cases in which people applied for asylum but do not qualify. Asylum seekers typically cannot cross through multiple countries to seek asylum in the United States. They leave their home country for the nearest country to flee persecution. Otherwise, they are not seeking asylum but economic opportunity or a different form of immigration status, which means a different process. Story 48. Is there even a search for undocumented individuals? It seems like if authorities are targeting legal residents, resources are being wasted pursuing individuals who are here legally or who have not committed any offenses. Story 49. There is no justification for it. Justification requires a process and reasoning. They are just rounding up individuals without any regard for who they take. Story 50. I don't understand the point of give us you're tired, you're hungry, and you're poor if we can't welcome everyone. People who are legally here are citizens or have protections. They have gone through the proper channels, as all these anti-immigrant advocates say they should, yet they still face threats of deportation. Some of these individuals labeled as illegals are children of green card holders. And those children are citizens. This is the only home they have ever known. Furthermore, gaining citizenship is a process. It takes time, and some people might just be here for work or education. I cannot take this anti-immigration stance seriously when technology entrepreneur Elon Musk's visa expired years ago. Story 51. This is a trick question because if you admit that they are legal immigrants and not illegal, then there is no justification. The reality is that the people who are deporting legal immigrants do not believe in legal immigrants. Their definition of legal is closely tied to their own personal morals and opinions. Therefore, they do not think that they are legal according to their own definition. Story 52. The justice system generally supports this by locking up innocent people. They simply do not see them as innocent, or in this case, as legal citizens. Like the rest of the justice system, they deserve endless scorn for it, at a minimum. Story 53. Cigarettes. Get your ice-cold cigarettes and blindfolds. Folks, cigarettes and blindfolds. 2 for the price of 1. Grab your cigarettes and blindfolds. They make great souvenirs for the kids back home. Story 54. Deporting legal immigrants is a feature, not a flaw. The individuals being deported are the ones this administration intends to deport. Story 55. They are authoritarians. The fact that they can get away with it is the justification for their actions. Everything else is merely excuses. Story 56. This implies that the people involved are contemplating moral implications or considering any immigrant as legal, only if they're not white. Story 57. If the media cared as much about who was coming into the country as they do about who is being sent back out, we wouldn't have this problem to begin with. I also don't agree with the accepted narrative that America is the only place where these people can thrive. I feel that this perspective is quite elitist and narcissistic. It assumes that these immigrants are incapable of figuring things out for themselves and that they desperately need the American government to flourish. Story 58. It instills fear and paranoia in the population, coupled with financial struggles caused by various actions of this administration and the cutting of essential medical services. This will make the populace more compliant and less likely to resist. Story 59. Kilmer was not here legally and had a deportation order in place. It was not mentioned that he is a gang member and an abuser. The fact is, if you are here legally and following the law, you have nothing to worry about. I find it ironic that when asked who is being deported illegally, the response is always an illegal criminal. It is a 90-10 issue, and you are on the losing side. What I think is great is that if you harbor or assist someone who is undocumented, you will go to jail and receive due process. Story 60. As I understand it, a mother who was in the country illegally was deported and chose to take her children with her. This isn't deporting the children. It is simply Americans traveling outside of the United States with their mother. They can return at any time as they are Americans. The mother cannot return because she is not American. Story 61. I don't think hunting for undocumented people down like they typically do is justifiable either. Story 62. If families want to stay together, they all have to go. Legal immigrants cannot be deported if they are causing trouble or committing crimes. Story 63. Please remember that the root of this policy is racism, pure and simple. One of the key political talking points on the right has been the Great Replacement theory, which is the notion that Democrats, under the direction of a global cabal, are trying to bring in more Hispanic people into the country for their own political gain. They didn't all just stop believing that absurd idea overnight. They don't care about citizens being deported because it accomplishes their goal, decreasing the pace of the ever-evolving ethnic composition of the country. It isn't about laws, citizenship, or procedure. Once you understand that, you understand everything. If left unchecked, this situation will only worsen since this is not the end game. It's only the beginning. This also aligns with their statements about wanting more children. They want white women to have more children. The racism is evident and visible to all. These individuals are not acting in good faith. Stop acting as if they are. There is no justification for this. Story 64. Simple answer: no justification. It's something that can happen. When it happens, condemn it and rectify the mistake. This is not to say that the government is acting in this manner, but it is what should be done in such cases. That said, it is no reason to refrain from deporting illegal immigrants altogether. Story 65. They know they are moving the goalpost. Today, 1 citizen. Tomorrow, 3 citizens. Down the line, 1 million, 3 million. Nazis did it. The current regime will do the same. Story 66. Now there are unconfirmed reports that not all immigration and customs enforcement agents are on board. Certain agents are having other agents doxxed, and some are frustrated with their counterparts for using aggressive tactics. I don't think you should believe this, but it would be great if it were true. Story 67. People won't mind until it happens to them or someone they care about. They lack the ability to empathize. Story 68. I am starting to think that a significant number of Americans exhibit sadistic tendencies. I believe Donald Trump, as well as Stephen Miller, Tom Homan, Pam Bondi, and Kristi Noem, enjoy the suffering of others. Story 69. What about the immigrants who are showing up for appointments, believing they are doing the right thing, only to have their lives ruined when all they wanted was a better life? Story 70. The people involved in this do not care. There is a lot of corruption and malevolence in the world. When it is your time, you fight against the long defeat as best you can and pass it along. Story 71. I can read, and 2 judges found him to be a member of MS-13. Now he's gone. I can't wait until they are all gone. Story 72. I am fairly certain it is intentional as a tactic to drive non-whites away. They are easy to identify as they all have jobs, pay taxes, are married to citizens, and have children. If you are looking for a demographic quota, it is likely a safe approach since no one expects an unexpected visit from individuals with ulterior motives. Those individuals typically dress casually, so most people probably assume they are simply offering a free roof inspection or discussing pest control services or special internet deals. Story 73. Are there any supporters of Trump who want to comment on this? While there are extremist views, there are also individuals who voted for him, and I would really like to hear their perspectives. Is this typical behavior? When the first citizen was deported, I looked up statistics on how many U.S. citizens are accidentally deported each year, and surprisingly, the answer was not 0. It was 70. This leads me to the question, what is going on with that? Story 74. It's the point. Their goal isn't to get rid of undocumented people. It's to get rid of non-white individuals. These are the early days of genocide unless we find a way to stop them. Story 75. I am so tired of this. I cannot access Reddit without encountering a long list of political posts. Even the subreddits related to my hobbies are filled with negative posts about Trump. This is becoming absurd. Story 76. I spoke with a doctor last night about how people's lives are being affected by this. He mentioned that mistakes will happen. He believes that immigration is the #1 issue in this country. Story 77. There is no justification. They simply do not care. To them, these individuals are less than human, similar to how Hitler viewed the Jewish community. They believe these lives do not matter. For them, it is better to be wrong than to express regret. They create an alternate reality in which they are always right. Honestly, I measure individuals predominantly by how they handle their mistakes. I do not consider those who are unwilling to make things right to be very good people. Story 78. By deporting, do you mean the involuntary removal of someone from the country? I would like to see evidence of this occurring intentionally and repeatedly. Story 79. My husband, who is an American citizen, is originally from Brazil. I live in fear that he will be deported illegally. It is all very concerning. Story 80. I take it that's a rhetorical question since the only reason Immigration and Customs Enforcement has for doing so is to further the transition to an authoritarian state, also known as the Nazi States of America. Story 81. ICE better hope Trump never leaves. Otherwise, it will be completely gutted for disregarding the Constitution, civil rights, and human rights. Story 82. It is important to understand that most immigration agents are often the most racist people you will ever meet. Trump's orders are their ideal situation. Story 83. ICE must be abolished, and its agents and leadership should be tried for the crimes they have committed. Every last one. Story 84. In all fairness, the people being deported are making their own decisions regarding whether to take their U.S. family members with them. Should that not be a parental right? Shouldn't parents who are being deported have the right to make decisions about their minor children? From some of the posts on Reddit, it seems that many people support tearing families apart and denying parents any choice. Do you agree with that position? Story 85. If they didn't send the legal children with the undocumented parents, the liberals will claim that Trump separates families. Story 86. You do not understand what is happening. Illegal immigrants who had babies while they were here are being deported as required by law. They are choosing to take their American-born babies with them. Otherwise, people would be complaining about family separations. Story 87. We need to stop calling it deporting. It is not accurate. You cannot deport a citizen. It is simply abduction. Story 88. They do not care whether the individuals of color are here legally or not. They just want them gone. The fact that people are unwilling to acknowledge this, allowing supporters of Trump to feign ignorance while the media overlooks it, is astonishing. Story 89. What is the collateral damage for the people who were sent here unprepared? What is the collateral damage of children trafficked by cartels? What is the collateral damage of not expelling criminals who have killed American citizens for no reason? Story 90. There are none. I would like to see every illegal immigrant deported swiftly. However, no citizen is required to show documentation. Authorities should arrest known illegal immigrants and impose fines on companies that employ them. The remainder will surface. Story 91. So again, who was removed without due process? Kilmer had his due process. He was classified as a gang member whose life was in danger from other gang members. I admit they shouldn't have violated the order by deporting him back to his home country. But they did, and he is right where he should be. Story 92. I don't think you can be real. Here's the thing. Having immigrants benefits both the Democrats and the Republicans because they have talking points to rally their voters in the fall. It also benefits both parties since, in agricultural states, even in California, these low-wage workers have no rights, are more subject to abuse, and get paid very little. They serve not only to deflate wages, but also as a sociological reminder to the working poor that they could be picking fruits for a few dollars. Now, is the immigration process convoluted? Yes, but as I said, it serves both parties at the moment. I think Congress needs to really evaluate this process. You can either earn your legal residency or you can't. As for the children, I believe they can be U.S. citizens. I don't know if they can be used as anchor babies, though. Just as a note, the wealthy do this all the time. I'm from South Florida, where wealthy individuals from Latin America and around the world give birth to create anchor babies for their parents, as well as for convenient tax and financial advantages. Story 93. The important thing to remember is that they are not law enforcement. Intervene if you see something happening. Make them fear us. Story 94. One cannot justify it if they are being honest. However, one can explain it. Donald Trump is a known Russian asset who stated he would harm us if elected. One just needed to use their brain. Story 95. The cruelty is the point. They want everyone to be scared. not just the undocumented individuals. Hence, they are arresting judges and have openly discussed sending homegrown criminals to detention facilities, because based on the definition, that is what Sakote represents. Story 96. They are part of the Orange Cheetos regime. They are modern-day oppressors. All bad apples. Tearing apart families, subjecting them to physical and emotional abuse, and even killing others is never justified. History will not be kind to them. Story 97. My future father-in-law is and always has been a staunch Republican. In a recent debate with his daughter, she got him to admit that it would take 100,000 to 1 million innocent people dying for him to stop supporting the current immigration crackdown. Never mind the fact that he has a son-in-law who is Chinese. His response to "this could happen to your family" was they should go back to China anyway. Needless to say, he has been almost completely cut out of his daughter's life, except for a rare phone call. Story 98. I have spoken to individuals who genuinely believe mass deportations are beneficial. They justify this by suggesting that a few legal immigrants may be affected, but the overall outcome is worth it. Story 99. They missed an unpleasant situation, and someone looked to the public officials in Congress and the Senate for assistance and found individuals who were submissive and indecisive. Story 100. Ironically, after this administration is gone, and with some luck, if this immigration and customs enforcement activity has been stopped, there may be many agents looking to relocate outside the country. I believe we will prosecute them. They know, or should know, there is really no excuse for following such unconstitutional orders. Story 101. The Supreme Court set the stage for last year. In their dissents, the progressive justices tried to convey how concerning the decision to grant presidents immunity for official acts is. However, concerns never stopped corruption from occurring. Story 102. There is no justification for deporting a mother and her 4-year-old child, who is a U.S. citizen, when the child has stage 4 cancer. The child is now without access to her medication and doctors. This is unacceptable. Story 103. Better 100 innocent people should be imprisoned than one guilty person go free. Story 104. When you have the power to do something and no one has enough power to stop you, you don't need justification. Story 105. It's unfortunate they got caught in the net, and I hope they are returned. Even non-violent individuals deserve to be here. But maybe now the realization that blanket grabs of people, where only some are the problem, should not be done will set in. They went after everyone on January 6th, even if they just stood there. And now you are unhappy that innocent people are suffering because some were the problem. You don't get to pick and choose when you're the one setting the precedent. Story 106. I feel the same way about it as I do when parents break the law and their children are placed in foster care. It is unfortunate for the children, but ultimately the fault of the parents. Should we expect that all parents follow the rules to avoid any potential negative consequences? Story 107. Name one United States citizen who has been deported. A United States citizen, not a green card holder or a visa holder. If you are undocumented, then it is goodbye back to your country. Story 108. If you are in the United States legally but break laws, you accept that you will be deported according to your agreement. This is a significant aspect of the visa process, and all countries have similar provisions. Story 109. The Democrats created this problem. They opened the border and allowed tens of millions of unvetted, undocumented immigrants into the country. Now they are upset with the people who are addressing their problem. Story 110. Those involved in deporting legal citizens should face severe consequences for their actions. We would not forgive someone for murdering a citizen, so why should we forgive those who uproot legal citizens and devastate the lives of many families? They are a threat to our society. We must not be lenient. Give them a hearing and hold them accountable for their actions. This includes lawmakers and others who support these activities. We cannot allow anyone to violate the Constitution and evade the law. Story 111. When you work for the morally corrupt, you become morally corrupt. That is the only thought I have when authorities arrest children and see nothing wrong with it. Story 112. How do you justify it? You justify it by constantly vilifying immigrants, calling them vermin, gangsters, and terrorists, and using them as a scapegoat for anything you can. Racism and xenophobia are already rampant. Just fan those flames, and suddenly you have grown adults cheering as children with cancer are kidnapped and shipped away where they cannot get treatment. Or do you mean morally, how do they justify it? That's easy. You just let your racism and xenophobia entirely dictate your morals. Or, in the case of leadership, greed and vanity as well. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.